What's good? It is Sam here, and today we have our awareness ranking where we have 5 different factors. We have 2 from YouTube, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, and we have TikTok to get an understanding of the Generation Z and their interest. But what all of these add up to is the collective understanding of who has the most relevance. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it is good to freaking see you. Let's get into it. So, YouTube actually has 2 of the 5 factors. The first being the total views on the top 10 videos that have been published within the last 24 hours. And in order to be counted, they have to have, in this example, Pete Buttigieg, they have to have Pete in the thumbnail and or in the title of the video. Otherwise, those views are not counted in the top 10. And it's only within the last 24 hours. So we stack rank the candidates according to who had the most views down to who had the least views. The next factor on YouTube is the total number of people who published videos. So this takes into account all the creators who are making content for each one of the candidates, whether that is somebody associated with a specific candidate or a CNN type of thing, right? Whoever is publishing content around each one of these candidates, that gets counted. The total within the last 24 hours. Similarly, in order to be counted with the views, they have to have the person's likeness in the thumbnail and or in the title. So this could be, say, Yang Gang would still be included, or Mayor Pete, that would include it as well. And those are the 2 factors on YouTube. The next factor we looked at was on Twitter, and when we search for the candidate's hashtag on Twitter, we go to the latest tweets. So this is all the tweets that have happened within, the latest, right, in chronological order of the ones that just happened down to the oldest ones. And we look at over the last hour for each one of the candidates, and we add up all those that have taken place over the last hour to see who had the most people talking about them over the last hour. We stack rank them, who had the most down to who had the least. And then over on Instagram, we actually look at the aggregate of usage of the hashtag. And clearly Bernie's going to have a lead here because he ran in 2016. But in this case, right, we search for Bernie's hashtag, and then we see the total number of posts that have included his hashtag. So this is an indicator of the total number of people who are interested in talking about him, whether good or bad. It's still a gauge of awareness around the candidates, right, at a macro level. And then the last factor that we take a look at is TikTok. Now, I don't have I can't show you what I actually do on the computer here because TikTok is not the company, or the app hasn't been around for that long, but they do have a tremendous amount of monthly active users. So when you pull up the app, you can actually search. I can't do it on their website, so I'm pulling it up now. And I can go in here and search for a candidate's name, and then I can pull up the hashtags and see how many views there are on that candidate's hashtag, right? So I take all of these together, and we stack rank the candidates 1 through 9 in each one of these factors, and then we take an average, and we come up with the top 5 candidates being Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang, and Pete Buttigieg rounds out the top 5. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. If you use the hashtag STOLT, then at the end of the videos, we do a Q&A, and we can actually go over your comments. So don't forget to use the hashtag STOLT in your comments. So let's take a look real quick at these. We're going to look at the views first on YouTube. We see that Bernie had 850,000 views over the last 24 hours. This data is as of 1/17, so 2 days ago. The next was Andrew Yang with 522, and Elizabeth Warren rounds out the top there. So there was only 4 candidates who had more than 100,000 views over the last 24 hours. And you can see that there's basically only 3 who have much relevance. And I think the only reason that Elizabeth Warren has any relevance here is because of her spat, like butting heads with, like, acting like a child on national television. The next is a total number of publishers. So this is creators who are making content for each one of the candidates that have been published within the last 24 hours. Remember, who have the likeness in the title. And we've got, again, we only have 2 over 100, but we have 3 that are like pretty far out ahead of most of the other people. If you want to include Joe, that's 4 people who have a decent number of people making content around them. And again, with Elizabeth Warren and with Bernie here, I think that these numbers could be skewed. So next time when we do this ranking, those numbers could be lower just from what's happened with this past the debate where Bernie and Warren had some type of dispute on stage, and people could hear what was actually happening. So I think those skewed the numbers a little bit high. But either way, it is awareness, whether it's positive or negative. It is awareness around the candidates. The next was taken at 6:45 p.m. on the 17th, and this is the total number of tweets over the last 1 hour. So this factor actually holds a little bit less weighting than all the other ones, just from the fact that it is such a little bit of data. This is only 10% of the total scoring. But we can see here that Andrew Yang had the most by a decent margin, like a 50% margin, 50% increase over the next closest, who was Bernie Sanders, Joe and Elizabeth and Pete. Nobody else is, and you can see these are the only ones here. Amy has 0 interest on Twitter, Tom has 0, and Michael has 0. Let's go over to Instagram. Instagram, we could probably guess, right? Bernie's going to win because he also ran in 2016. The next is Joe, followed by Elizabeth and Pete and Andrew. So Pete and Andrew are like neck and neck. They're only off by a tiny, tiny little bit, by like a couple hundred in terms of the magnitude. So even though that one is 4th and one is 5th, they're so close together that I think you seeing the data is probably going to be more relevant. Even though it says 4th versus 5th, they're very, very close. It's almost like a tie. They're off by like 200. It's barely, I mean, they're very, very close. Clearly, Bernie's just absolutely destroying everybody. But I don't know how much of this came from last time versus how much of it is now. But if you use the other platforms as an indicator to understand how much was that in 2016 versus how much is now, he's winning, right? He has 850,000 views. He's got 150 people making videos about him on YouTube over the last 24 hours on the 17th. That's tremendous. That's a lot of people. That's going to give you a lot of the ability to get your message out to more people. The last factor here is their hashtag on Twitter. On TikTok. And again, on TikTok, there's actually only 2 people who are even trying on TikTok, and TikTok actually has a bigger weighting in this than Twitter does, and that's because TikTok's substantially larger than Twitter in terms of monthly active users. There's not a lot of data around it, but from a reporting standpoint, so there's, you know what I mean, some things going on here in terms of like, I can't get a clear understanding of exactly what's happening, but trying to get our best idea of like the truth here. We see that Bernie Sanders hashtag has 12.6 million views on TikTok. Nobody else is even in the neighborhood. Like, nobody else is even slightly close. The next closest is half of that at 6.7, and that's Joe. And when you dive into Joe's a little bit more, the hashtag like Joe Biden, and then the ones next to it are like fuck Joe or something similar to that. So that one could be interesting, whether that's just going to sit there or whether people are going to be like, there's like creepy Joe or something. I don't know what it is, but there's a bunch of hashtags when I looked for Joe Biden that were like very negative in terms of the sentiment associated with it, which was kind of interesting. And then we have 3 people who are all pretty close. Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang, and Pete Buttigieg. But the only 2 people who are, I would see, gaining more relevance on this platform is Pete and Andrew Yang. I'm sorry, Pete and Bernie Sanders, because those are the only two who are actually showing up, right? If you go out to your neighborhood and you knock on 1,000 doors a month, and I knock on 30 doors a month, who do you think is going to fucking have more exposure in your neighborhood? Like, you show up every day, right? I'm not showing up every day. And I'm using an example of 30, but like nobody else is even posting on the platform. Tulsi had 2 posts, right? But it looks like she just started her account, so she had 2 posts. We'll make sure you press that subscribe button, and then we can actually follow along to see how this grows over time. And then the total breakdown here, I think the top 5 is the most relevant here. Tom's number 9. It's interesting, Michael Bloomberg actually came in at number 7 at the first time here. We'll see if all of his like ridiculous amount of spending is going to move him up in terms of relevance or not. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below. Again, if you use the hashtag Stolt, then we can get into the comment section and talk about your comment. So this is from Dustin Price. My experience with YouGov polls you have to do so many consumer product surveys before any political one, so the 1,500 are more likely to be campaign volunteers over sampled, in my opinion. Again, so what Dustin is referencing is, if you look at Real Clear Politics, they have a YouGov, which does like polling. I think it's through The Economist is associated with them, and they'll do polling for the Democratic Party to understand who they think is like relevant, and they'll have a sample size of 1,500 people, and to try to say that 1,500 people represents the collective of 300 plus million people, I mean, it's laughable, right? Like, I studied statistics for years and years, and I get the theory and the idea behind it and everything like that, but I think that having something that's a little bit more clear, something like, you don't have to do what I'm doing here, but something where you can go look at the data yourself might be more captivating for a lot of people, because they can understand it a little bit more clearly than the subtle nuances of how you do sampling and the stratification of different, because you got to factor in different subgroups within your sampling and all that. There's a bunch of different other stuff that most people are just not going to have any fucking interest to learn about, right? Where if you base it upon like the social platforms that are actually relevant, right? There's like 5 or 10 social platforms or different things that we can take a look at, like our Google search volume ranking, our YouTube search volume ranking, our website ranking, like all these different factors to understand who is relevant, right? And we don't have to base it on 1,500 people's opinion for the macro 300 plus million people. We can go to the source of like where people are actually talking about them and understand who's winning, right? Like, look at this data. Millions of views over here. We've got tons of different posts. Even the person who has the least amount of posts right here, Tom Steyer, still has more posts than what's in the YouGov poll, 1,500 people. I guess they would win here, because this is just Twitter and it's only one data point, but if you tracked this at the same time every single day over the course of a month, which might be an interesting exercise to do, and you looked at this every single day over the course of a month, that would probably give us a better indicator of relevance. So I don't know. I think that we at least should have the conversation around if there's a better way of doing something in 2020. The next is from Grace Chan. Thank you so much, Dustin, for the comment. The next is from Grace Chan, and she writes, 1, Yang, Gabbard, and Sanders. How true is the order in terms of the Iowa caucuses? Iowa caucuses video is coming up soon, and that's based on the YouTube search volume and the Google search volume. The number 1 and number 2 sites on the planet. Google's number 1 and YouTube's number 2. So we take a look at the search volume in 3 different areas, the 12-month, the 3-month, and the 1-month, to see who's actually number 1 in each one of those time periods before we take an average. I'm thinking how much of the web traffic could translate into votes. I like your top three in that order. So in terms of translating to votes, the currency of the 2020 and going forward is attention. If you have, in my opinion, but I've seen it play out thousands of times. If you have attention, if you have enough attention, you can do whatever you want. If you want to get elected, if you want to meet somebody, if you want something economic-wise in terms of money, selling something, you just need attention. Whatever that is, right? If you're trying to get your message out as a politician, you need people to fucking listen to you and get your message out to more people. So the attention is the factor here. The attention is what's going to allow people to get their message out to more people if you have that attention. The last bit here is also in your numbers within the U.S. because Yang is large international support and they may not mean votes. Correct. Awesome point. So when we take a look at the Iowa caucuses, when we look at Google Trends in terms of the Google and the YouTube search volume, we can break it down by geographic region. So we can look at just the searches within Iowa or within the U.S. to understand, right, to be much more clear. To be much more clear, did I say Google? To be much more clear with our data. So thank you so much, Grace. I really appreciate the comment. Hope you enjoy your week. The next is from A Mind with a Heart. I like that name. Is there some way to find out how much growth for Yang is due to canvassing in Iowa? Awesome question. This is going to be coming out soon. It's Yang Week in Iowa, and there's a ton of phone banking, texting, letter writing, door knocking going on. I imagine people would look him up because of that. The same with New Hampshire. That's coming soon. Thank you for bringing that up. That should be out this week. I'm going to be taking a look at before Yang Week started and then after, so we get to actual understanding of like the efforts to see if it's effective or not in Iowa. And then we have some data. We can look at the Google searches, the YouTube searches from before they started, and then the Google searches and the YouTube searches for after. And then we get to see if the ranking has changed at all, right? Kind of interesting. Should be out this week. Make sure you press that subscribe button and that bell notification. Share this video with somebody if you find any value in here, or if you want to spread this message. I appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, there's some links in the description. I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to set up a Patreon. I'm not sure how to do parts of it, but that'll hopefully be out soon as well. I appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.